He remembered the silence before Earth burned. Captain Rener stood alone in the observation deck, staring out into the black. The stars didn't blink out here. They just watched, distant and indifferent, as worlds lived or died. Behind him, the faint hum of power throbbed through the deck plating beneath his boots. The Hurricane class. His ship. His vengeance. 6 months ago, the Galactic Concord sat across from Earth's delegation and laughed. Their long-necked diplomats, all glittering scales and smug tones, called humanity a salvage species. They said Earth was resource-rich but spirit-deficient. They said we lacked the psychological complexity to sit among the stars. Then they glassed Jakarta, then Cairo, then Sao Paulo. It wasn't a war. It wasn't even called that. The Concord used the term corrective adjustment. They said it was an unfortunate but necessary recalibration of substellar disorder. And Earth buried its dead and took the hits like a dog trained to stay quiet. Rener didn't. When the old UN command crumbled, when the last of the Terran fleet went silent near Neptune, when our leaders begged on broadcasted channels for mercy, Rener didn't beg. He went dark, took a prototype, an unfinished nightmare, Bofandors, and vanished into deep space. That prototype was now alive beneath his feet. The TNV Vindicator, Hurricane class. Not some elegant, sleek alien toy. It was ugly, brutal. A floating fortress with armor that shrugged off stellar radiation and a weapons array designed by madmen who hated the very idea of negotiation. Humanity's answer to humiliation. He walked the bridge like a ghost. His crew, 143 men, all volunteers, all outlaws, moved like parts of the machine. No ranks anymore. Just mission, just fire. Some had lost families, some had lost whole cities, some had just been waiting for a reason to stop obeying and start killing. "Captain," growled a voice from the helm, "we've entered the outer shell of the Visari cluster." Rener's jaw clenched. The Visari, one of the races that called the destruction of Earth's oceans an unfortunate side effect. The same bastards who handed over human slaves to their insectile allies as gifts of goodwill. "How many ships in orbit?" he asked. 13, sir. 2 capital, 4 escorts, and 7 minor utility class. No signs of active alert." "Good." Arrogance. "Any civilian metrics?" Pause. "Estimates suggest 1.2 billion Visari planetside, roughly 2% military." Rener looked back at the screen, at the beautiful glittering blue of the Visari homeworld. So similar to Earth, almost mocking. "Open communications, unencrypted." The crew hesitated just for a moment. "You sure, Cap?" He nodded once. Cold, deliberate. The broadcast pinged out like a whisper through the void, a message that would echo in their comms, planetary hubs, even personal devices. One sentence, spoken in human English. "This is for Earth." Then the Vindicator lit the stars. Mass drivers launched tungsten rods at relativistic speeds, punching holes through orbital cruisers like paper. Plasma lances sliced space open, shearing through escort vessels as if they were tissue. No warnings, no negotiation, no terms. They had 6 minutes of chaos before Visari defenses even began to mobilize. By then, half their fleet was ash. Rener stood calm in the center of the storm, watching the enemy burn with the same blank expression he wore at Jakarta's funeral broadcast. There was no joy in it, no triumph, only debt and repayment. Because this wasn't justice. This was reminder. Humanity had limits. We begged, we pleaded, we groveled, but we don't forget. And when we strike back, it's biblical. "Target planetary command relay," Rener said flatly. "Full charge. Wipe their voice off the grid. And with that, the Hurricane class roared again. The Visari system bled silence. After the first barrage, the orbital net was gone, shredded, vaporized, or drifting uselessly in charred debris fields. Their military protocols had never accounted for a human war machine of this scale, and certainly not one with the rage to wield it like a weaponized memory. Rener didn't smile. He didn't even blink. His voice remained the same low growl that had carried him through 27 denied promotions, 4 reprimands, and now 1 personal war. Scan surface, civilian broadcast centers. His eyes stayed locked on the tactical readout. The Visari had finally launched their counter, a small wing of atmospheric interceptors, weak plasma cannons, and outdated defense cruisers coming out from the shadow of their moons. Too late. "They're trying to jam us," said Gale, his comms tech, scarred and sharp-eyed. "I can still punch through." Rener nodded. "Good. Patch me to civilian band." She hesitated. "Sir, if we go live, the whole Concord will hear it." "I want them to." A small nod, then a green light on his panel. He spoke. "To the Visari people. This is Captain Rener of the Terran Navy Vindicator. I am not here to conquer. I am not here to negotiate. I am here to remember. You allowed your leaders to burn Earth's skies. You sat silent while your warships glassed our cities. You watched humans dragged into chains and didn't speak. Now, you will remember." He didn't wait for a reply. They'd reply in screams soon enough. "Arm the Hellfire package," he said to his weapons lead. "You want to full deploy it?" "Planetary broadcast hub. Hit it with both warheads. Total vapor." Silence. Even among his hardened crew, there were lines that sounded insane, unthinkable, but not for Rener. Not now. Not after Cairo. "Do it." 10 seconds later, the Hurricane-class ship loosed a pair of sun-scorched warheads. Old school, crude, nuclear. A deliberate insult. Aliens prided themselves on clean kills, elegant beam weapons, techno-neat warfare. But humanity, when enraged, fought like it meant it. The impact crater covered 100 kilometers. The shockwave killed another 5 million. The Visari communications went dark, except for emergency beacons blinking like dying stars. "Sir, atmospheric disruption from the blast is creating orbital interference. We've got 2 cruisers trying to break from the far side of the planet." "Let them run," Rener said. "They'll spread the message faster than we can." 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 3. In the quiet that followed, Rener walked the underdecks. The Vindicator was massive, nearly 4 kilometers long, stitched together from Terran steel, stolen alien tech, and backroom experimental systems Earth's own government was too scared to test. It was ugly. It was loud. It was a beast born for a single reason: make the stars hurt. Down in engineering, he found Nolan, his chief mechanic, nursing a cigarette beside a generator the size of a semi-truck. "You realize we just made 1 billion enemies, right?" Nolan muttered without looking up. Rener didn't answer immediately. "We already had them. Now they're just honest about it." Nolan laughed bitterly. "You just dropped fission bombs on a capital world. That's not revenge. That's extinction-level diplomacy." "Good," Rener said. "Let them know what extinction tastes like." He turned and walked on. There was no time for debate, no space for guilt, not anymore. He returned to the bridge where the next report waited like a blade against the throat. "Sir," Gale said tightly, "we have incoming." Not Visari. Not any Concord ship we've ID'd before. Rener's eyes narrowed. "Another species?" "Unknown. But they're coming fast. Faster than our sensors clocked before. Slipstream disruption confirms 6 ships. Large. possibly heavy-class war carriers. "So they're listening now," he muttered. "They're not alone. The conquered fleet is mobilizing. The Shiari, the Volkar, and the Drennan all dispatched forward recon. Looks like a coalition." "Of course." He chuckled without humor. "They'll call it peace enforcement, security response, defense of shared interstellar integrity." He turned to his weapons lead again. "Start plotting new targets, all capital-conquered planets." "What about Earth Command? If we—" "Earth Command is dead," Rener snapped. "They buried our home and called it stability. They watched us beg and sent apologies instead of retaliation. That's not command. That's surrender. We don't take orders from ghosts." A cold silence swept across the bridge. Then nods. No protests. Every man here had made peace with death long ago. 6 hours later, the Vindicator slipped from Visari orbit under cloak, leaving nothing but ruin behind. Every orbital defense had been crushed. Every Visari broadcast screamed for aid. And every conquered ambassador now had a single undeniable message in their hands. Humanity could not be bullied anymore. The next target was already logged. Volkar Prime, the diplomatic capital of the conquered. A shining example of alien order and cooperation. A hub of policy. That's why it had to burn. But before the jump, Rener gave orders for quiet. No engine hum. No interior comms. Just rest. He locked himself in his quarters and let silence claw at his skull. He didn't drink. Not anymore. He needed clarity. But he stared at the small, hollow projector on his desk for a long time. It displayed an image, cracked, flickering, of a boy. 7 years old. Black hair, lopsided smile, holding up a crayon drawing of Earth and a spaceship. His son, dead in Jakarta, no grave, no body, just a heat signature and a silence that never left. Rener exhaled hard and turned it off. He couldn't feel that now. He couldn't afford to feel anything. In deep space, the Vindicator stopped mid-jump as alarms wailed. "Slipstream interference!" Gale shouted. "We've been pulled!" "Who has the tech to interrupt a Hurricane-class jump?" Nolan growled. "Only one possibility," Rener said grimly. "Conquered black-site systems." The ship shook violently. Lights dimmed, panels cracked. And then, they weren't alone. 6 massive vessels emerged from nothing. Angular, jet black, devoid of markings. Silent killers. Conquered judgment class. Illegal even by their own laws. The message came before weapons locked. "Terran vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Accord 88-7. Stand down. Surrender your ship and prepare for boarding." Rener didn't even blink. "Open comms." A beat. Then Gale nodded. Rener stepped forward, stood tall, and said calmly, "You burned Earth. You enslaved our people. You erased our cities. Now you want to erase the ones who survived?" "No. You had your chance." He nodded once. "Fire all forward cannons. Launch Raven Swarm." The bridge lit up in red. The Hurricane-class battleship, bruised and brutal, came alive again. Out of the belly of the beast came the Ravens, autonomous kill drones, programmed with one directive: shred anything not born on Earth. They moved like death, fast, invisible to Concord sensors, and armed with AI disruptors designed specifically to cripple Concord tech. 3 enemy ships were down within 2 minutes. The others fought harder: beam cannons, shock fields, nanomines. The Vindicator took hits. The hull screamed. A breach opened on Deck 12, killing 4 men instantly. Fire licked the ceiling. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Rener stood motionless. "Status." "Shields down to 43%. Hull breach sealed, enemy fleet crippled. Finish them. It took another 7 minutes. Then the silence returned. A graveyard of conquered pride. After cleanup, the bridge ran quiet again. "Captain," Gale said softly, "we've intercepted transmissions. Earth is rallying. There are riots, protests, support too. But the UN fragment says you're a traitor now. They've issued a formal warrant." "Good," Rener said. "They called you the Butcher of Visari." He chuckled darkly. "I've been called worse." There was a pause. "Any regrets?" Rener stared out at the wreckage. "No." "Not even what comes next?" He didn't answer. Because he knew what came next. The Concord would unite. They would build fleets. They would paint Earth as a rogue world, a threat to order, a terror species. The diplomatic channels would collapse. Trade would stop. Sanctions, embargoes, and then war. But Rener didn't regret it, because humanity had been dying in silence. Now, at least, it would scream. The storm didn't stop at Visari. It bled outward like a virus injected straight into the galaxy's heart. Within a week, 7 alien news nets had declared Earth a galactic menace. Conquered diplomats used words like containment and preventative response. Trade routes were shuttered. Travel zones locked down. Humans living off-world vanished, detained, deported, or dead. But no one could touch the Vindicator. Not yet. She drifted on the edge of conquered territory, half ghost, half legend, a warship that had become something else entirely. A symbol of the reckoning humanity had never been allowed to unleash until now. And at the center of it all was Rener. Quiet, cold, unmoved. Inside the command deck, surrounded by scorched metal and flickering lights, he studied the data feed pouring in. A dozen alien systems had started evacuating their outlying colonies, fearing strikes. Fear was good. It meant they finally understood what they were dealing with. "Next target?" he asked. Gale, pale and grim, pulled up the projections. "Volcar Prime is tightening planetary defenses. Interceptors, shield satellites, orbital mines. They know we're coming. Let them. But there's chatter, sir." She hesitated. "They're mobilizing a deterrent force, not standard Concord. This is different. These ships are off record, not officially part of any fleet, but loaded. We're talking AI captains. Experimental weapons, black ops." Rener's eyes narrowed. "They scared enough to break their own rules, huh?" "Terrified," she said quietly. He leaned forward, fingers drumming once on the console. "Good." Then he stood. The Vindicator arrived at the edge of the Volcar system 12 hours later. Not cloaked, not hidden. Rener wanted them to see it coming. He wanted fear to roll through their streets like thunder, but something was off. "Where are their patrols?" he asked. Nolan tapped through the scans. "Gone. All orbitals pulled back. No scout ships, no interceptors. Either they ran scared or—" "They're baiting us," Rener said. And they were. The moment the Vindicator crossed the first defense ring, alarms flared, space fractured. Not just one ship, not 2. 26. Judgment class, interdiction class, even experimental cloaked frigates. They'd surrounded the Vindicator in silence and waited, calculating, cold. "Ambush confirmed," Gale shouted. "Slipspace interference engaged. We're locked out." Weapons charged around them. Hundreds of targeting arrays flicked on in unison. Then a signal came through. Video. High definition. Polished. Condescending. A Volcar admiral appeared on screen, long-limbed, smooth-skinned, wrapped in ceremonial armor, the kind worn when one species expected to crush another as an example. "Terran vessel. This is Admiral Sukar of the Conquered Unified Retaliatory Fleet. You will power down your weapons, disable your engines, and prepare to be boarded. You are surrounded. You are outgunned. You are alone. Rener stared at the screen like it had personally insulted his son's memory. Then he stepped forward. You've made 3 mistakes, Sukar. First, you assumed numbers matter to a species raised in chaos. Second, you think we ever feel alone. He tapped a sequence on the console. A deep vibration rumbled through the Vindicator's frame. Something massive shifted in the lower decks. And third, he said coldly, you brought a fleet into range of this. In the belly of the Hurricane class, the Oblivion Lance awoke. It was humanity's secret weapon. Theoretical, experimental, never used, never tested. Until now. A particle cannon wrapped in gravity-folding stabilizers, capable of bending space around its own beam, allowing it to fire through solid matter. It had one purpose: destroy anything it touched, regardless of shields, armor, or physics. Target the flagship, Rener said. Gale's voice trembled. It could overload the core. Do it. She keyed it in, and the Vindicator screamed. The beam ripped through space like the hand of God, a single streak of light, not bright, not loud, just final. Sukar's ship vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, just absence. The remaining fleet panicked. Too late. The Vindicator launched everything it had: Raven drones, plasma storms, kinetic rods. The cloaked ships tried to run. Their stealth tech failed against the Ravens, whose targeting systems were trained to smell fear. In under 15 minutes, 20 Concord warships were reduced to debris and melting corpses. Rener didn't cheer. He didn't even speak. He just watched. As always. But war has a price, and the cost came fast. On the 4th day after the Volcar strike, a message reached the Vindicator. From Earth. Unsecured. Open channel. The voice was raw, unfiltered. Human. This is Commander Thorne, Resistance Outpost Echo 12, broadcasting from Earth. If you can hear this, we need help. They're rounding us up. Conquered enforcers. Our own government's helping them. Anyone who supported the strike on Visari is being purged. They're coming for us. They say you're a terrorist. They say... Static, then silence. The crew turned to Rener. He didn't flinch. But his voice was low when he spoke. How far to Earth? 17 hours if we burn the secondary core. He nodded. Burn it. The Vindicator arrived above Earth like an angry god. The orbital ring around the planet, once a testament to humanity's rise, had been repainted in Concord blue. Alien banners floated beside Earth's. Human ships, weak and outdated, drifted like loyal lapdogs. It disgusted him. Gale scanned the comm grid. They're jamming all wideband, but I'm picking up movement on the surface. Resistance flares. Some sort of urban battle in Sector 7, near Old London. Rener looked down. His home, where it all started. Where he'd sworn never to return until the stars were on fire. Deploy ground teams, he said. 10 squads, full armor, no prisoners. What about orbital defenses? Rener stared at the grid, then tapped into the ship's internal comms. This is Rener. Every man who walks Earth today walks for the fallen. No mercy, no hesitation. Get our people. Burn anyone in your way. The battle for Earth wasn't strategic. It wasn't political. It was personal. Conquered enforcers patrolled the streets like foreign kings. Human collaborators herded their own into holding pens. Alien drones floated above old landmarks, enforcing compliance with shock batons and threat broadcasts. But the Vindicator's forces landed hard. Urban tanks, exo-armored troops, fire teams trained to wage war in alleyways and ruins. The streets burned. London became a battlefield of screams and gunfire. And Rener, he led from the front. He stormed the old Parliament building himself, dragging out the last remaining UN dignitary, a gray-haired coward named Aldridge, the man who once told Earth to kneel for peace. Rener put a bullet in his head on live broadcast, then turned to the camera. To every human still hiding, we're back. And to every alien watching, the reckoning isn't over. That night, the fires of London lit the sky. The Vindicator hovered overhead like a vengeful moon. Resistance cells reconnected. Citizens rose. The Conquered's grip cracked. But it wouldn't last. Rener knew it. This was just a moment. A breath. The storm was still building, and the next strike would decide everything. The smoke hadn't cleared over London before the Vindicator began registering gravitational ripples. In the silence between gunfire and ash, Gale's voice cracked through the comms. "Captain, they're here!" Rener didn't ask who. He already knew. The Conquered didn't take humiliation lightly. The orbital scanners filled with red pings. Hundreds, not patrols, not experimental prototypes. Warships, thousands of kilometers wide, AI-driven dreadnoughts, antimatter artillery, and 2 vessels bigger than any blueprint Rener had ever seen. "Jesus," Nolan muttered from behind him. "That's not a fleet, that's Extinction." Gale turned, pale. "We need to retreat. If we fire now, we won't scratch them." Rener didn't move. Instead, he walked to the central holoprojector and zoomed in on the lead ship. It had a name emblazoned across the hull, written in 11 Conquered dialects. Judgment Absolute. He remembered hearing about it years ago. A theoretical deterrent, built only if humanity ever tried to rebel. The last word in enforcement. They built it anyway. They were always planning to use it. Earth's skies began to burn. The Conquered fleet entered orbit without warning shots. Their ships didn't engage only military targets. They struck power plants, communication towers, escape ports. Civilians fled underground as plasma rained down like molten death. Inside the Vindicator, sirens howled. "Shields up," Rener snapped. "Weapons full charge. Scramble every Raven we have left." He turned to Gale. "Emergency ping to all resistance networks. Hold the surface. Reinforcements incoming." Gale blinked. "We don't have reinforcements." "Yes, we do," Rener said grimly. "They're just not ours yet." While Earth's defenders scrambled to hold the line, Rener ordered the Vindicator to full burn, straight into the belly of the oncoming fleet. Most captains would have held the line. Rener never held anything. The Hurricane-class ship screamed through the clouds like a fury reborn, engines shaking reality. Conquered drones scrambled to intercept, but they weren't fast enough. Nothing ever was when the Vindicator was angry. The first 3 enemy ships went down before the Vindicator even slowed, torn apart by kinetic slugs the size of city buses, ripped in half by plasma claws engineered to bypass multi-layered shields. But it wasn't enough. "More incoming!" Nolan shouted. "Our hull is reading microfractures on Deck 9. Reroute power from secondary bay. Brace for heat back." Another enemy ship locked on, a Drennan fracture class, known for tearing smaller ships in half with focused radiation beams. But the Vindicator wasn't small. It rammed the Drennan vessel head-on. Screams echoed through the bridge as the impact slammed everyone off their feet. Consoles cracked. Fire burst from a ceiling panel. Sparks lit up the room like a dying star. But the Vindicator held. And the Drennan didn't. Their ship exploded into 1,000 burning pieces, dragging 2 escorts with it. Rener climbed back to his feet, blood trailing from a gash above his eye. "We're not winning," Gale gasped, holding her ribs. "We're surviving. Rener's voice was ice. Then let's survive louder. In the chaos, Earth's resistance began to turn feral. What started as isolated gunfights turned into a mass civilian uprising. Civilians armed with stolen alien weapons stormed conquered checkpoints. Collaborator bunkers were burned to ash. People who once feared to speak now screamed war cries in every street, rooftop, and tunnel. Rener had lit the match. Earth was finally on fire. But the Judgment Absolute hadn't moved yet. It hovered in geosync orbit, silent, ominous, waiting, until suddenly it didn't. Gale saw it first. It's powering something. What? She froze. I don't know what it is. It's not listed on any Concord manifest. It's channeling graviton energy, massive amounts. Rener didn't hesitate. Target it, Oblivion Lance, now. We can't, she hissed. Coolant's fried. After the last overload, the core's unstable. Nolan's voice echoed from engineering. If we fire the lance again without cooldown, it could cook half the ship. Rener looked out the viewport at the Judgment Absolute. We'll die anyway if we let it fire first. He turned. Do it. In the depths of the Vindicator, engineers screamed as they rerouted every ounce of power into the lance. The ship groaned, buckled, and nearly tore itself apart. But the weapon came online. Gale fed in coordinates. Locked. Rener closed his eyes. Fire. The Oblivion Lance ripped space open again. A beam twisted through physics, bending light, folding heat, and struck the Judgment Absolute dead center. There was no explosion. Just silence. Then a pulse. A ripple so deep it knocked out every sensor on the Vindicator. The conquered fleet staggered. Smaller vessels disintegrated. Earth's orbital layer went black. The Judgment Absolute had survived. Barely. Its armor burned, half its core exposed, internal reactors flickering like dying suns. But it was still there, and it was angry. Retreat, Gale shouted. No, Rener said. One more push. Cap, we've got less than 30% weapon capacity. Then ram the bastard. Stunned silence. Captain, if we ram a ship that size, we die, he said flatly. But they die first. Nolan's voice cracked through the comms. Engineering's locking main thrust. You want to finish this with one big middle finger? I'll deliver it. Rener nodded. Do it. The Vindicator turned. Every system rerouted to propulsion. No more shields, no more guns, just momentum. Inside, the crew worked like the damned, sealing off leaks, securing reactors, praying to gods they stopped believing in years ago. Rener stood at the front of the bridge as the Judgment Absolute grew closer in the viewport. His breath was steady, his eyes locked. He'd buried friends, watched cities die. He had no more rage left, just purpose. Impact in 30 seconds, Gale said. And then, just before they hit, something changed. Another ship emerged from nowhere. Then 2, then 5. Human. Old Earth warships, obsolete, barely functioning, piloted by rebels, pirates, smugglers, civilians in stolen conquered vessels. All of them racing into the fray like flies toward a fire. What the hell? Nolan muttered. Gale's mouth fell open. It's the Resistance. Rener stared and smiled, the first real smile in years. Looks like we're not alone after all. The makeshift fleet hit the conquered armada like a tidal wave. They didn't fight clean. They didn't fight smart. But they fought like hell. Conquered formations crumbled under the sheer chaos of it, and as the Vindicator veered off at the last second to avoid impact, it fired one final shot from its forward cannon, a tungsten slug that pierced the damaged core of the Judgment Absolute. This time the ship exploded, and this time it didn't survive. Hours later the battlefield was quiet, not peaceful, not safe, but quiet. The conquered had retreated. What was left of their command fled to deep space. Earth's skies cleared, and above it all, barely holding together, the Vindicator floated in low orbit. Rener stood on the hull in a pressurized suit, staring at his broken planet. Gale stood beside him. "You think they'll come back?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "They will," he said finally. "But next time we won't be begging. We'll be ready?" "No." He looked down at the fires still glowing across Earth's surface. "We'll be hunting." The silence after war was never peaceful. It was heavy, loud in its own way, the kind that settled into your bones and made your ears ring when you lay still, the kind that reminded you it wasn't over, just waiting. The Vindicator was barely holding together. Hull fractures were sealed with scrap. Fires still flared in lower decks, and half the crew were either dead or limping with field-dressed wounds. But they'd survived. Earth had survived. And that made everything different now. Captain Rener stood at the Vindicator's forward viewport, arms crossed behind his back. Below them, Earth glowed with fires and rebellion. Riots had turned into revolutions. Every major city had burned and bled. The collaborators were being hunted down street by street, building by building. Humanity had woken up. But it wasn't unity. Not yet. "You should rest," Gale said quietly behind him. Her face was bandaged, left eye swollen shut. She hadn't slept in 30 hours. Rener didn't turn around. "No time for rest." "Sir, we barely won this fight. We can't push back yet. We don't even know what the Conquered will send next." "That's why we hit first," Rener said. She stared. "We don't even have a fleet. We don't need one." He tapped the console beside him. "They sent their message years ago when they torched our cities, when they enslaved our children, when they told us to be grateful they didn't wipe us out. Now we send ours." Gale hesitated. "What message?" Rener looked down at Earth. "That we're not scared anymore." The plan was simple, brutal, impossible. So it suited Rener perfectly. The Vindicator would not wait for the Concord's next strike. Instead, it would lead a counter-invasion, not to conquer but to crush, to show the galaxy what happened when you backed a man into a corner and told him to kneel. Over the next 6 days, they gathered everything they could. Resistance fighters swarmed into orbit, dragging up every functioning ship they could fly. A few were old Earth Navy vessels, decommissioned and rusted. Most were patched together junkers, stolen freighters, or salvaged Concord wrecks. They weren't a fleet. They were a threat. And that was enough. "Targets," Rener said as he stood before the holo projector. Nolan pulled up the map. "We've identified 7 prime systems: Drennan, Ciari, Visari remnants, and a few Conquered hubs on the rim. Strategic value varies. Some are symbolic, some tactical, but all of them played a hand in Earth's subjugation. Which one will hurt them most?" Gale pointed at a glowing red marker. "Xeros Station. It's a central node. Not military, not political. Economic. Every Conquered trade route flows through it. Shut that down, and they bleed from the inside." Rener nodded. "We hit Xeros." Xeros Station wasn't built for war. It was built for comfort, elegance, trade, diplomacy. It stretched across a Lagrange point between twin moons in the Drennan system, a self-contained world of polished spires, interspecies marketplaces, and golden towers lined with alien art. On any other day, it might have been beautiful, but today, it was prey. The Vindicator dropped out of slip space 2,000 kilometers from the station, followed by 28 ships of varying quality, speed, and fury. Xeros sent no immediate signal, no defenses, no threats. They didn't think humans would dare come here, until the first missile struck. The outer ring of Xeros exploded in a flash of kinetic violence. Civilian freighters screamed through traffic lanes, scrambling for hyperspace lanes. Diplomats ran for sealed chambers. The station's artificial gravity hiccuped, sending thousands into walls and furniture. Emergency klaxons wailed in a dozen languages. Inside the station's central chamber, Ambassador Arun of the Drenan Confederacy screamed into a communicator. "They're mad! They're attacking a non-military target! What kind of savages strike civilians?" And then the answer came, piped into every comm system, broadcast into every room, screen, and station corridor. "The same kind of savages you turned into orphans. This is Captain Rener of the Vindicator. You called us animals. You told us to sit beneath your table and smile. Now we flip the table." The strike lasted 45 minutes. Xeros never stood a chance. Its defense systems were built for pirates, not purpose-driven vengeance. Docking bays were blasted apart, economic cores reduced to slag. The upper spire, a Drenan masterpiece known for hosting peace talks, was destroyed in one focused kinetic lance. There were civilian casualties, a lot of them, and Rener didn't flinch. Guile stared at the reports, pale. There were schools on that level. So was their slavery logistics hub, Rener said flatly. "Children are only sacred when they're ours, right?" She didn't answer. Rener turned away from her silence. Word spread fast. By the time the Vindicator left Xeros, every major conquered system was in a panic. Fleets were rerouted. Trade routes frozen. Political networks went dark. Fear did what diplomacy never could. It united humans across the outer colonies. Old captains, exiled admirals, bounty hunters, ex-cons. They started calling themselves the Iron Veil, an unofficial Terran fleet, loyal to no flag, no council, just Earth, and Rener's vision of reckoning. 26 new ships pledged allegiance this morning, Nolan reported. 14 of them are barely space-worthy. One's powered by a damn fusion generator held in with duct tape. Do they have weapons? Yes. Then they're fleet. But not everyone saw Rener as a savior. Messages came in daily. Some were from surviving Earth leaders, scattered remnants of a system that had collapsed under its own spineless weight. They begged for diplomacy, urged for ceasefires, warned that Rener's war was turning Earth into a pariah. He ignored them all. But one message, intercepted from the Conquered Core Council, got through. It wasn't a threat. It was a deal. "Captain Rener, you have proven yourself a capable adversary. We acknowledge humanity's resilience. We offer peace, status recognition, a seat at the table. In exchange, your surrender, your execution, a symbol of closure." Rener listened to the message twice, then deleted it. No reply, just another target. On the 6th day after Xeros, Gale came to him with new intel. "Cap, we found it." He looked up. "Found what?" She tapped the holomap and zoomed in. A facility. Deep conquered space. Not listed anywhere. Not military, not civilian. Hidden inside an asteroid field near the Volvex Rift. "What is it?" "Data suggests it's where they keep them." Rener narrowed his eyes. "The humans." Gale nodded. "The ones they didn't kill." A long silence. "How many?" She hesitated. "Hundreds of thousands, maybe more. They've been using them in biogenetic experiments, hybrid testing, enhancement breeding. They're not just enslaving us, Cap. They're rewriting us." Rener's jaw clenched, and then something inside him snapped. He didn't wait. There was no vote, no committee, no delay. He sent a fleet-wide message. "This is no longer about vengeance. This is about rescue. Every ship, every weapon, every drop of fuel. If you're with me, we hit that facility and we don't stop until there's nothing left but screams. We bring our people home." And for the first time, the fleet roared back. "Hey!" They called it Facility 9 Delta, the kind of name bureaucracies give things they want to forget. Hidden inside a cloud of ice-choked asteroids deep in conquered territory, it didn't exist on any map, treaty, or broadcast. No comm traffic, no civilian paths, nothing. Until now, Rener stood at the center of the Vindicator's war room, staring at the orbital scan. The asteroid field shimmered with strange heat signatures, artificial gravity pockets, station infrastructure cloaked in EM dampeners, and flickers of life forms. Human life forms. "This is where they keep them?" Rener asked. Gale nodded. "Confirmed. We intercepted a transport route last week. A Concord courier moving bioassets from Visari space. Inside were 47 humans in stasis, all tagged for transfer to 9 Delta. Survivors from Earth? Some, others, bred." The word sat there like poison in the air. Rener's voice dropped to a whisper. "How long?" Nolan turned from the tactical screen. "Some of these systems have been active for decades. We think they started the breeding programs before the invasion. Quietly, hidden beneath medical partnerships, research treaties. They were preparing to replace us before they even tried to break us." Rener didn't speak. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. The fleet moved 3 days later. 72 ships. Most were barely flight-worthy. Some were little more than flying guns with patched-together armor and duct-taped reactors. But they came. They came for the same reason Rener did, because they had family. Names, faces, memories. Because if this was true, if the Conquered had been harvesting humans like cattle behind the galaxy's back, there would never be peace. Not ever. This wasn't about retaliation anymore. It was about purification. Ide Delta was tucked between 2 dead moons, shielded by a fractal cloaking array so advanced even Conquered fleets couldn't locate it unless given precise coordinates. Most of the galaxy didn't know it existed. That was the whole point. But Rener had the coordinates, and the Vindicator had rage. The first ships entered silently, scout craft drifting like debris until they passed the last EM pulse wave. Then Rener followed, dragging the Hurricane-class battleship behind them like a scythe through tall grass. What they found chilled even the most hardened killers on his crew. 9 Delta wasn't a station, it was a machine. The asteroid field had been hollowed out and threaded with tunnels, labs, and containment spheres. Hundreds of them. Glowing blue like captured stars, floating inside grav fields. Each sphere held rows and rows of cryopods, stasis coffins with human bodies inside. Men, women, children, eyes closed, tagged, numbered, owned. Gale stared at the scans in shock. "They're being kept like inventory." Rener's voice was flat. "Because that's what they think we are." Nolan turned from the weapons panel. "Sir, defense grid coming online. They know we're here." "Good." "Multiple Conquered warforms inbound. Security drones, automated cannons, AI kill circuits. If we hit that outer shell, we're going to lose half the fleet." Rener just stared. "Then we make the other half count." The Vindicator struck first. A barrage of particle lances vaporized the outer crust of the nearest defense moon. Shockwaves lit up the asteroid field. Conquered defense platforms powered up and fired, but the Iron Veil fleet had already begun to scatter, weaving through the ice clouds like wolves. Every pilot knew the mission: reach the core, breach the labs, and get those people out, or die trying. The fighting was brutal. Conquered warforms deployed experimental machines, autonomous AI walkers, drone swarms, and vacuum-adapted mercenaries. The asteroid field turned into a charnel house of twisted metal and plasma fire. 3 Iron Veil ships exploded in the first 6 minutes. Rener watched the death reports with ice in his veins. He didn't flinch, didn't curse. He just kept barking commands, coordinating fire strikes, sending crews deeper into the killing field. They didn't come here to survive. They came to finish it. Inside the Vindicator, strike teams began boarding operations. Docking claws tore into one of the containment spheres. boarding bridges extended, exosuited soldiers crossed over, weapons raised. The inside was worse than anyone imagined. Human bodies, naked and pale, floated in nutrient tanks. Some were children, modified, genetically enhanced, breathing in some thick green fluid like manufactured fish. Others were hybrids, twisted, modified, implanted with alien tech, test subjects. Jesus Christ, one soldier whispered. Rener didn't look away. He stood in the breach, weapon in hand, eyes scanning the rows. And then he found her. Podsto Dvudset Sedum B, a woman, early 30s. Blonde hair, floating like seaweed in the fluid, eyes closed, faint scars on her forehead. Her name was written in faint English along the glass panel. Ava Rener, his wife. Dead, or so he thought. He staggered for a moment. Gale was behind him. Cap, is that… Yes. He moved forward, shaking, hands trembling. Get her out. Now. Engineers swarmed the pod, cut into the system. The life support alarms screamed. They ripped the lid off and pulled her free, soaked and shivering, her breath catching violently as the fluid pumped out of her lungs. She choked, gasped, and opened her eyes. 39,000 human captives were extracted over the next 5 hours, most unconscious. Some waking up mid-evacuation, all of them scarred, some physically, others deeper. Rener stood outside the med bay, watching the chaos as nurses and medics scrambled to process them all. Children screamed. Parents clung to the living. Some had no one left to hold. Ava sat quietly in a corner, wrapped in a thermal blanket, her eyes empty. He hadn't spoken to her yet. He couldn't. Gale came up beside him. That's what they've been hiding, Cap. That's what the Conquered has built its empire on. Not trade, Rener muttered. Not diplomacy. Us. The mission was a success. The galaxy didn't see it that way. When the Conquered Council found out Facility 9-Delta was gone, reduced to flaming rock, they didn't send words. They sent war. A broadcast lit up across the neutral zones the next day. Humanity has declared itself a species of war criminals. You have violated every galactic convention. Your captain is a terrorist. Your fleet is an insurgency. There will be no more diplomacy. There will be no more talks. Prepare for total annihilation. Rener stood in the command center of the Vindicator as the message played. He waited for it to end. Then he turned to his crew and spoke. Good. Let them come. Because now they're not fighting rebels. They're fighting survivors. And this time, we're not the ones who need to be afraid. The Conquered didn't bluff. 3 days after the 9th Delta raid, they deployed the Extinction protocol. The name wasn't metaphorical. From one edge of the spiral arm to the other, their ships lit up. Every fleet, every black site vessel, every mercenary they'd once disavowed. 7 major species signed the new Conquered Accord. 13 more lent auxiliary power, over 9,000 ships with one objective: eradicate Earth. The last official message sent by the Conquered to any human comm line was short. You had your chance. You refused peace. You chose death. Rener didn't bother replying. Instead, he prepared the trap. The bridge of the Vindicator was scarred, scorched, and patched with 100 repairs. But it was alive. The core was stabilized. The weapons grid glowed with restored fury. And for the first time since the first strike on Visari, the crew was calm. No panic, no dread. They weren't surviving anymore. They were fighting to win. Rener stood at the command table, flanked by Gale, Nolan, and the rest of his battle-scarred crew. They're coming in waves, Gale reported. First contact in 15 hours. Their path is clear. Earth, no deviation. Total commitment. How many? Rener asked. Nolan's face was pale. Over 4,000 ships in the first assault fleet, flagships, interdiction carriers, judgment-class dreadnoughts. The whole galaxy's mouth is open. And we're the meal, Gale muttered. Rener stared at the galactic chart. Dots of red flooded the screen. Then he spoke. Call the others. The Iron Veil fleet had grown like a virus. After the 9th Delta liberation, more defectors had joined. Some were pirates, others deserters. Some were former Concord captains, disgusted by what the war had become. They brought old ships, half-broken AI, and stolen codes. And something else. An idea. Rener's message had spread further than he knew. On backwater colonies, fringe settlements, asteroid prisons, humans had found something in him that no treaty ever gave them. Dignity, and now they were ready to fight for it. When Gale opened the channel, over 200 ships responded. Not many compared to the coming onslaught. But every one of them had bled for Earth. Everyone had buried someone the Conquered tried to erase. They didn't need inspiration. They needed orders. Rener gave them. Listen closely, he said, voice low. Broadcast from the Vindicator's bridge to every Allied ship across 6 systems. We are outnumbered, outgunned, outclassed. And that's what they've always counted on. That we'd bend, crawl, accept our place. But we didn't. We stood up. And when we did, they called us terrorists. They burned our homes, stole our children, turned our species into livestock. Now they send everything they have to silence us. Let them. Because we are not fighting for diplomacy or for survival. We are fighting for the right to stand without asking. We are fighting because no species should ever be owned. Let the stars burn. Let the galaxy bleed. Today, Earth fights back. The trap was simple. Rener had mined Earth's orbit with 1,000 false signals, decoy satellites, explosive drones, magnetic ghost mines. Beneath the orbital clutter, he placed the real weapon, the Leviathan net. A Terran-designed gravitational weapon, built in secret during the final days before Earth's fall. Its power source had been deemed too unstable for wartime use. Its deployment had been shelved. Until now. Rener reactivated it and had the Iron Veil retrofitted to link with the Vindicator. The idea was insane. But insanity was the only language the Conquered respected now. At 0600 hours, the first wave hit Earth's orbit. The galaxy didn't come with diplomacy or mercy. They came with fire. Conquered ships moved in clean formations, angled, strategic, sweeping like blades. Their first strike annihilated 2 Iron Veil frigates near Mars, scattering debris across the belt. Then they pushed in. But the Iron Veil didn't fight fair. Suicide ships rammed Concord vessels at point blank. Gravity torpedoes tore ships apart from the inside. AI-hacked missiles turned enemy drones against their own fleet. The Earth fleet bled, but so did the galaxy. Then the Vindicator entered the field. Rener's voice came across open comms, not just to his fleet, but to the entire Concord Armada. You came to erase us. Let me show you what erasure looks like. He activated the Leviathan net. In seconds, the grid pulsed. It locked onto Concord's fleet via their own jump signatures, gravitational trails like fingerprints. The net reversed the gravity fields, then multiplied them. Thousands of ships began to drift, pulled toward each other by impossible force. Carriers smashed into cruisers. Frigates collapsed into dreadnoughts. The vacuum screamed with rupturing hulls and detonating cores. The first wave of the Conquered fleet lost over 400 ships in under 7 minutes. And it wasn't over. On the surface of Earth, human resistance surged. Armed with weapons scavenged from the battlefield, they turned every city into a kill zone. Conquered ground units that landed met nothing but guerrilla traps, improvised charges, and flamethrowers in narrow streets. From Cairo to Seattle to New Tokyo, humans fought like cornered beasts, but with one difference. They weren't cornered anymore. Back in orbit, the Conquered scrambled. Their rear formations disengaged. Others tried to warp out, only to find that the Vindicator had deployed interdiction mines powered by the reactor core of Ix Delta's remains. A poetic twist, their sins used against them. Still, they outnumbered Rener's forces 5-1. That's when the exiles arrived. Former Conquered ships, ghost fleets, pirate armadas. Humanity wasn't alone anymore. From the edge of the system, new signals poured in. Ships bearing no flags, painted black, some with Terran markings, others old and erased. They didn't answer hails. They just fired. The Conquered's second wave fractured before it even got close. The final phase had begun. Inside the Vindicator, the core was beginning to overheat. "Sir," Nolan yelled, "Leviathan net is destabilizing. If we keep pulling gravity through the reactor, we risk a full cascade." Rener didn't hesitate. "Route all power to weapons. We'll burn the net if we have to." Guile stared at him. "If we burn the net, we burn us too." "I know." She paused, then nodded. The final hour of the battle wasn't strategy. It was rage. Humanity had no polished ships, no pristine fleets, just pain. And every ounce of it was turned into fire. Rener led the final charge, the Vindicator diving headfirst into the Conquered's rear flank, cannons screaming, AI drone swarms pouring from every bay. Conquered ships turned to flee. They were cut down. Others begged for mercy. They received silence. Rener's last message before the final shot was short. "Earth says no." By the end of the day, 80% of the Conquered invasion fleet was gone. The rest? Broken, scattered, their arrogance shattered. Inside the Vindicator, fires raged, hull plates buckled. The ship groaned like a wounded beast. Gale collapsed at her console, bleeding from her shoulder. Nolan coughed black smoke. Rener stood at the center, watching the wreckage drift past the viewport. Earth's skies were dark, but for the first time in generations, they were ours again. The war didn't end with silence. It ended with ashes. For 3 days, the sky above Earth remained black with debris. Fractured hulls drifted across low orbit like metal corpses. Fires still burned in the clouds. Radio static buzzed through comms, unreadable, unintelligible, like the ghosts of voices that hadn't finished speaking before they died. Rener sat alone in what was left of the Vindicator's command chamber. The view screen was cracked. Half the ceiling had collapsed. The war table was scorched black with plasma damage, and the systems barely flickered with auxiliary power. Everything around him smelled like smoke and blood. He didn't care. He'd done what no one thought was possible. He didn't save Earth. He took it back. Outside, the world was trying to breathe again. Old cities woke from the rubble. Resistance cells became councils. Former prisoners emerged from Conquered labor camps, blinking into daylight. Children born in chains walked free for the first time. The Iron Veil was no longer a rogue fleet. It was the new military arm of humanity. Their ships patrolled orbit, picked through the wreckage for survivors, and hunted down the last fleeing Conquered signatures across nearby systems. For the first time in galactic history, alien ships ran when they saw Terran hulls. They'd learned what arrogance cost, but even victory had a body count. Rener kept the names in his head. Anderson, Reyes, Tomar, Clark, Gale's little brother, Nolan's wife, Ava's father, his own son. He never wrote them down. He didn't need to. They were tattooed into his spine. "You should come down." Gale's voice came through the comm. Quiet, rough. She was healing, stitches along her jaw, arm in a sling. But she was alive. "Cities are rebuilding," she said. "The Iron Veil's forming a provisional government. The old UN's gone. No more puppet flags. People are asking for you." Rener didn't move from his seat. He stared at the dark sky, watching pieces of conquered ships slowly spin through the clouds. "You won," she said after a pause. "I didn't win," Rener muttered. "We're free." He looked down at his hands, burned, bandaged. "I didn't fight for freedom." Gale said nothing. He finally turned to the communication. "I fought so we could remember who we are." He eventually descended to Earth a week later, not with ceremony, not with banners, just a personal shuttle and a faded coat. The people didn't cheer. They didn't need to. He walked through the streets of London, or what was left of it. Buildings were half-gutted, scorched, some still smoking. But the people were building again. Hammers replaced guns. Laughter replaced gunfire. Kids ran through broken fountains like they'd never heard of orbital bombardments. Ava waited for him at the old Parliament steps. She'd recovered faster than anyone expected. Her eyes were sharper. She spoke less, but when she saw him, her lips twitched, the ghost of a smile. "You never gave up?" she said softly. He shook his head. "Couldn't." "I saw the records," she whispered. "What they did to Earth. What you did back." Her voice faltered. "You scared them." "I wanted them to be scared," he said. "But what happens now?" He looked around, and for the first time, didn't have an answer. The Conquered didn't send another fleet. What was left of its leadership scattered across neutral space. Some species pulled out of the Alliance entirely. Others signed quiet treaties with Earth, desperate to avoid becoming the next Xeros station. The galactic trade lanes rerouted. Humanity was no longer considered dangerous. They were now untouchable. But Earth's new seat at the galactic table wasn't built on diplomacy. It was built on terror. And they all knew it. 6 months passed. The Vindicator was grounded permanently, parked in a dry dock facility orbiting Mars. It would never fly again. Its systems were too unstable. Its core had cracked. But no one dismantled it. They left it as it was, scarred, half alive. A monument. Every survivor who walked its halls said the same thing. It didn't feel like a ship. It felt like a grave. Rener refused all political positions. They offered him everything: a seat in the Earth Assembly, a planetary fortress in his name, a galactic ambassador title. Some even wanted to crown him Warden of the Core Systems. He declined them all. "I didn't burn the galaxy to wear its ashes like a crown." So he left. Quietly. No one knew where. Some say he went off-grid, into the deep void, chasing conquered remnants for closure. Others believe he returned to Jakarta's ruins, built a home where his son once played. A few think he died quietly in some off-world colony, a man whose war finally caught up with his soul. But none of them really knew. All they had was his last message, broadcast once before he disappeared, unlisted, untraceable, but recorded. This galaxy doesn't belong to empires anymore. It belongs to the unforgotten. Every name you erased, every child you stole, every city you turned to smoke. They live on, in every human who learned that peace without dignity is just a prettier prison. We don't kneel anymore. You taught us how to fight. Now remember why you should have taught us peace instead. And then, silence. 10 years later, the galaxy had changed. The Conquered was fragmented, scattered into minor states. Some still refused to deal with humans. Others begged for Terran technology and trade. Earth's new military force, still called the Iron Veil, patrolled 5 sectors. No invasions since, no threats. They remembered the Vindicator. They remembered Rener, and they were still afraid. But fear wasn't enough anymore, because Earth didn't want revenge now. Earth wanted truth. So they kept sending out those old cryopod files, the list of names still missing from 9 Delta, the children who'd been sold off before the war even started. still out there, still stolen. And one day the Iron Veil would find them. When they did, the galaxy would remember that fire. Because humanity never forgot. In the end, the galaxy didn't fall, but it changed. And not because of diplomacy, not because of peace, because one man turned a battleship into a graveyard and made the stars remember what happens when you try to cage a species built from war.